There is a lot I could say about mouthwashing. I could talk about a myriad of themes, including the pitfalls of ambition, or late-stage capitalism and the effects it has on companies and how they treat their workers as a result. I could talk about the sound design, or the Nolan-esque non-linear storytelling. Hell, I could even get really crazy and talk about how Tulpar is a play on Tulpa, a being that's said to exist because someone believes in it so strongly, and how this is flipped on its head because every character in mouthwashing is undone by that which they try most strongly to believe. But I'm not going to talk about any of that. Today, I'm going to talk about how mouthwashing perfects something that every horror game strives to achieve: a terrifying loss of agency. I will be spoiling the entire game in this video, and quite early on as well, so if you haven't played Mouthwashing, I would highly recommend that you do. It is cheap, it is quick, and most importantly, it's a damn good game. So, with that warning out of the way, I feel like there are 3 things that need to be addressed to make sure we're all on the same page. 1. Jimmy sexually assaulted Anya. 2. Jimmy crashed the ship. And 3. Jimmy is the only person in this game who has any agency. Agency, of course, means the ability to do something, the ability to enact change in your own life. In this video, I'm going to go over how everybody aboard the Tulpar has a loss of agency. And at the end, I'm going to show how it all ties together to create a truly haunting game. Daisuke is, essentially, a child. A young 20-something with no goals in life and no idea of what he even wants to do. He tells us that his mom got him the internship aboard the Tulpar because he just never knew who he wanted to be. This is how Daisuke demonstrates his lack of agency. He doesn't know who he is or what he wants to be, so he pulls inspiration from the authority figures around him, namely Swansea and Jimmy. Swansea is a mean, old, bitter, recovering alcoholic who is dissatisfied with his life. And Jimmy... So, Daisuke, who really is just a happy-go-lucky lad who wants to do right by his superiors, is first berated and belittled by Swansea, his direct superior. But Daisuke keeps coming back, doing his best to impress the crotchety old man, never learning the lesson that maybe he should just do what he wants to do and not what someone else wants him to do for nothing in return. As punishment for not learning this lesson, Daisuke now has to deal with the Japist. Anya has locked herself in the medical bay with Curly. This makes Jimmy desperate to get into the medical bay because he thinks that Anya may hurt Curly. Curly is, of course, the key for Jimmy having a clean conscience after all the events of the game, for reasons I won't get into right now. So Jimmy does the only thing he knows how to do: get someone else to do the dirty work. Jimmy wants Daisuke to go into a collapsed vent in order to get into the medical bay. Daisuke, lovable idiot that he is, still pushes back against J. Diddy for this. He says that Swansea said it's dangerous, and even though he may have been hiding some cryopod from him, he knows, like, everything about this kind of stuff. Daisuke is obviously very trepidatious about this, and we saw from a flash forward earlier, what happens as a result? Daisuke, laying on the floor in a pool of his own blood, multiple gashes from crawling through the vent. But of course, the idea here is that Daisuke can't choose to do anything he actually wants, even when that thing is saving his own life. So, he climbs into the vent. Anya is a character that exemplifies a loss of agency despite giving effort towards it. Anya is, of course, the victim of Jimmy's sexual abuse. Naturally, there's not much she can do about this as they are stuck together on a ship hurtling through space. However, she does try to reach out in her own way to Curly, the man who has the power to actually do something about what's happened. She mentions how one dead pixel on the serene night scene is enough to ruin the entire image for her. Curly, being a man, states that he thinks that one dead pixel doesn't ruin the illusion of a peaceful scene. The one dead pixel is naturally a metaphor for Jimmy Jepstein. Anya tries telling Curly about what happened, but Curly is willfully ignorant of the problem. This even escalates to the point that Anya takes the only gun on the ship and hides it from the rest of the crew. When Jimmy confronts her about this, she says that she knew Curly wouldn't let her have the gun for her own protection. The player could chalk this up to the fact that maybe Curly just doesn't realize what actually happened until Anya says she's pregnant. And when Curly seems surprised, she simply says, "I told you." To which Curly replies, "I'll talk to him." Curly knew what his friend, the Jex offender, did, yet he chose to do nothing. Then, the crash happens. Curly, Anya's one saving grace aboard this ship, the only one with the ability to use the gun, is now incapacitated. Furthermore, the man who abused her, Jimmy, now holds the power to open the gun case for himself, should he find it. So she does the only thing she can think of in this situation. She sucks up to Jimmy. She tells him that he's amazing and so very capable, in the hopes that he doesn't target her, but it's all for nothing. At every turn, J.J. Jimson berates her and tells her how worthless she is, up until the point she says, "Fuck it," and finally makes the one decision that she still has control over. She locks herself in the medical bay, downs the remainder of the pain pills, and waits for death to take her. Swansea is an example of someone who had agency and threw it away for what other people believed that he should want. Swansea's story begins long before the Tulpar, but we only see this story as a result of the events on the Tulpar. Once Swansea is faced with his impending death by starvation, he turns to the only thing that he knows will make him feel better: booze. Well, more accurately, mouthwash. Swansea is perfectly content to drink himself into oblivion, but he does have one more goal on this ship: to ensure that Daisuke has the best chance possible of living his life and discovering what he wants. Swansea keeps guard over the utility room, and thus the one remaining cryopod inside, for this exact reason. Of course, along comes old Microgenus to fuck everything up. See, Jimmy wants to get into the medical bay to save Curly, even though Anya only wants to kill herself and not Curly. And Jimmy needs to sacrifice Daisuke in order to do that. However, Swansea is guarding the room that holds the sacrificial vent that Jimmy needs. So, naturally, Jimsogenus drugs Swansea, steals his key, and sends Daisuke to his death. Upon waking, Swansea realizes what Jimmy has done, and he regains both a clear head and some fragment of his long-lost agency. He grants Daisuke a quick death, but then he has a new goal. Swansea knows what he wants, and he's going to do his best to go get it. He wants Jimmy dead. It's unclear exactly what happens next, but at some point, Jimmy gets the upper hand on Swansea. But unlike Daisuke and Anya, who Jimmy killed without ever caring about them or their stories, Swansea's resurgence of agency demands that Jimmy listens to his story, about how he gave up his life of alcoholism for a quiet suburban life with a wife, house, and a collar job. Swansea realizes that he was never destined for much, admitting that his best days were when he was at the bottom of a bottle and blitzed out of his mind. But he knew that Daisuke could be more than that, and that he should have been able to save him. He uses his last breaths to tell Jimmy that Swansea has come to terms with who he is, but Jimmy can't do the same. Jimmy says the only thing that he knows how to say anymore: "I'm going to fix everything." Curly is what happens when someone who was given all of the power to make a difference does nothing with it. He is the captain of the Tulpar, the only person on the ship with access to the cargo, the flight controls, communications from corporate, and, most importantly, the only firearm on the ship. Anya comes to him and tells him of the abuse she has suffered, and all but begs him to do something about it. Instead, he tells her abuser what happened, and sits idly by while said abuser attempts to kill everyone on board by crashing the ship into an asteroid. The game gave Curly all the agency in the world, and since he did nothing with it, all agency was thus ripped away from him. He chose to do nothing but watch as his so-called friend doomed them all. So now, he can do nothing but watch as small Jick Energy slowly finishes what he started. Curly is forced to watch through one unblinking, lidless eye as Anya, the woman who was his duty to protect, takes her own life in front of him, and he is powerless to do anything to help. He is forced to watch as Jimmy finds and acquires the gun, the one person that Anya was hiding it from, and all he can do is laugh at the absurdity of it all. He is forced to watch as Jimmy guns down Swansea, a man who only wanted a better life for the one person on board who still had a chance at one. He is forced to watch as Jimmy thoroughly loses his mind and force feeds Curly his own sawn-off leg. Finally, he is forced to watch as Jimmy puts him in a cryopod and absolves himself of any guilt before turning the gun on himself and pulls the trigger. Whether or not anyone finds Curly in the next 20 years he'll be frozen is irrelevant. He is doomed to either live out the rest of his days in a pseudo-vegetative state, unable to even eat for himself, or he'll awake in 20 years to still be stranded, and then slowly starve to death. This is his cosmic punishment for failing to take responsibility for the man he personally brought aboard. With Curly done, this leaves us with only one crew member left. You may have thought that Jimmy is the last crew member. You're wrong. The Tulpar does have 5 crew members, but it also has one monster on board that kills everything it touches. Jimmy is the monster. You are the 5th crew member. From the opening sequence of the game, you, along with every other crew member aboard the Tulpar, are forced to do whatever Jimmy wants to do. The game says steer left to avoid imminent collision, but you're only given 2 options: steer right or leave. This is your only chance to exercise your own agency, your only chance to do what Jimmy doesn't want you to do. If you turn off the game now, the ship doesn't get steered and the lives on board aren't doomed. Of course, you do what Jimmy wants anyways. You steer right. You follow this pattern throughout the entire game. You send Daisuke to his death, even after being shown the result of him going through that vent. You make the cocktail to knock out Swansea, even though he is the last thing keeping Daisuke alive. You watch as Jimmy berates Anya, and you walk right over her corpse without so much as an interact prompt. You kill Swansea multiple times, even though at this point you may wish that Swansea would win. Finally, you stand by and watch as Jimmy takes his own life, a quick and painless death, absolved of all guilt after the horrors that he put the rest of the crew through. You are the one with the controls and the will to turn off the game and not let Jimmy continue with his rampage through the ship. But you can't. You don't have the agency. Jimmy is the only one with any agency in this game, and unfortunately, he is one twisted bastard. So I hope that you now understand how everything ties together in this game, and keep in mind this is only one facet of a brilliant diamond of a game. Furthermore, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, consider leaving a like and a subscribe. I do have a Twitch if you want to see me play these games live, but if you just want the good parts, then just watch the videos. Until next time, be sure to use your agency and live your life.